Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. So I think we've got a few people still joining, so we'll just leave it like that for the moment. But thank you all for joining our webinar today. Obviously, this is the Custard Communications panel discussion as part of our masterclass series. We've put together this program of events to provide independent business owners and hospitality businesses with the skills and the advice and the guidance to be able to help lead you through these challenging times and obviously answer any questions that you have at the moment. Every business is struggling and or facing new obstacles. So we really wanted to bring you some expert advice from our esteemed panel that we have here today. So I think it's best that I let them introduce themselves to you. We'll just get the cross from everyone. So I will go to David first, and then across to Harry and Stephanie. So David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Georgia. Good morning, everybody. I'm David Gardner. I'm a managing partner and one of the owners at 80 Days. For those of you who don't know who 80 Days are, we are a creative brand marketing specialist working within the hotel and travel industry. We work with about 500 hotels internationally now. And right across Europe, the UK, Middle East, and the rest of the world. My role within the industry, within the agency, is really very much focusing on client services and the strategic side of things.
Brilliant, Harry.
My name is Harry Fielder. I'm managing director of Umi Digital. We are a digital marketing specialist for the hotel and travel space. Specializing in both sort of the ongoing marketing, but also the software development side of things, doing quite a lot of bespoke software development. We're based in London and work with about sort of 150 hotels on a sort of ad hoc and also on an ongoing basis to kind of really champion that direct channel.
Amazing. And finally, Stephanie.
Good morning, I'm Stephanie. I'm Group Director of Sales and Marketing for Exclusive Collection. For those of you that don't know who Exclusive Collection are, we have 6 gorgeous country house properties in the south of England, but we also have 2 world-class spas, one at Pennyhill Park, one at South Lodge. We also have a state-of-the-art cookery school, and last but not least, we have a 12th century inn in the village of Castle Combe. So we're quite an eclectic hospitality business, and my life is made a lot easier by the 2 gentlemen that are on the panel today. So look forward to today's debate.
Brilliant. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So I just wanted to set the scene a little bit. Obviously, the challenges that we're in at the moment need no introduction. COVID-19 has obviously caused massive effect to the industry, and quite rightly so, all businesses across the UK went into survival mode. And what comes with survival mode is the cutting of budgets, which is obviously very significant and much needed at the time. However, following Sunday's announcement and the plan that has been released by the government, it's now time that we can start really effectively planning for the reopening and revival of the industry. So what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss a few different topics. Obviously, you are all, as the attendees, on mute, but you do have access to the Q&A option on the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions for our panel, please feel free to include them in there, and we'll ask them as we go, or we can do a Q&A at the end. So feel free to flood your questions through. If you have anything specific you want to ask, I'm sure lots will be covered anyway, so we'll anticipate some of the questions that will come through. And this session is being recorded, so please, if you have any tech issues or if you can't seem to access it, we will send you the link once the webinar is over. So without further ado, thank you for joining. So I think we'll start off today talking about planning and preparation. As I mentioned, obviously the government's announcement on Sunday has allowed people to have a bit more of a specific time frame, depending on supply chain and reopening dates for different businesses. So take it to the whole panel for this first question. How should businesses be preparing their budgets for this example? You know, strategies have had to change. So how can people now put in place their budgets for July and start feeding those activities through? David, do you want to start?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that we are finding is we, we're now well and truly into the current situation, is that every hotel is different to the next one. There are subtle differences, and it's going to be a multi-pronged approach really to the planning. But if we strip it back to the basics, for me, there are, outside of making sure you have the data to inform what you're doing, there are probably 3 key areas that you need to look at. And again, everyone's different, but I would say for most, the starting point is look at your brand. Before you can do anything else, before you can go out and communicate to people, understand what your brand is. I'm sure we might come back to this later, but make sure you're putting time and effort into making sure your positioning is right for what the marketplace is going to be. The next bit is look at the content on your websites, the demands, and again, we can talk about this later on, but the demands of what people are looking for now is very different to what they were looking for 8 weeks ago. So make sure that your content is right. And then the third one is then start looking at the communications and your marketing activities. Again, each one of those demands its own webinar, really, but those are the 3 key areas I would start to be focusing spend and time into.
Brilliant, thank you. And going across to Harry, on the prospect of digital, obviously, changing, how would you approach the preparation for your budget at the moment?
Sure. So I think with this kind of natural pause, I guess a lot of the people that we work with suddenly paused budgets, or certainly significantly reduced them. Now I guess the kind of confidence is slightly returning, and people are kind of the pause is kind of thawed out a little bit, and people are kind of restarting. But what we've tried to do in that kind of off season, as it were, or pre-season, is to try and shift the budgeting focus, rather than just setting an amount per month, is to set a kind of acceptable cost per acquisition, and getting hotels and hospitality companies into this mode of, right, we're not going to set an exact figure per month, but what we're going to do is kind of set, I'm happy with a 10% CPA or a 5% CPA. And that might be different for different revenue streams as well. So mapping out every individual revenue stream that you have, F&B, weddings, meetings, events, private dining, rooms, etc., and saying, right, what percentage of revenue am I happy to spend on marketing? And then once you have every single revenue stream, map out the exact macro conversion, so whether that's an inquiry or actually a sale or a room booking or whatever, all the way through to traffic acquisition, and all the different micro conversions within that funnel. So navigating galleries, downloading brochures, requesting callbacks, etc. And essentially mapping out the whole funnel and ultimately generating a conversion rate and therefore an acceptable cost per acquisition for that revenue stream. Now, if we can kind of then map the budget to that and say, right, as a marketing department, if I continually deliver you bookings for this at 10% CPA or a 5% CPA, will you keep fueling my marketing budget? And so what we've kind of tried to use this off season for is getting all of that infrastructure in place for everybody, not just for room bookings, but for everything else. So I think where we found, certainly with some wedding venues, is that we're monitoring inquiries. How many inquiries of the web are being generated through the site, but there's so many other triggers of intent that actually can register as a kind of micro conversion. And so as a preparation, what we've done is, or try to help with it, is try to map all of these funnels out and set acceptable cost per acquisitions for every different revenue stream, so that when it comes to the actual spend, we're justifying, and we can actually justify an increase in marketing spend to finance directors as well.
Exactly, thank you. So obviously, pulling a point on David's point there about utilising the data, that's obviously really key in this kind of situation. Stephanie, how has Exclusive prepared for their budgets? Obviously, utilising the data that you have and the challenges that you've come across as a group.
Yeah, I think listening to what David and Harry have said, I think I kind of can resonate with everything they are saying. And I think for me, when we kind of entered this lockdown, nothing that we were expecting whatsoever. And I know it sounds really basic, but actually it was really going back to a very simple, for me personally, a SWOT analysis, really, just really at this moment in time, really focusing on what our strengths, weaknesses, our opportunities, our threats are, and then breaking that down a bit like what Harry was saying in terms of those different funnels, breaking that down into our market segments and going actually in those areas, you know, us as a brand, where are our strengths, where are our opportunities? And then I took a step back, looked at our marketing budget that we'd, you know, preset with a great year in mind, all the great things that we were all planning for, and going, right, okay, in order for me to achieve those, what are the key areas that I need? You know, whether that's through our digital agency. I know we spoke about this briefly just before we went online, but even down to the projects, I think it's breaking it even down to that short, medium and long-term strategy. I think, you know, we've all been guilty of it. We can get caught up perhaps in the here and now, and it's really important that we just pause, take a breath and go, actually, we know who we are, we know who we want to be. This is a blip in time, but absolutely we need to prepare for that short, medium and long term. And I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of that as well. So, you know, we were very good at keeping those core projects that we knew we wanted to do last year. And the easy option would have been to drop them, and it really would. And you know, but for us, it was absolutely, we need to come out of this stronger, better than we were before. So for me, and data is critical. You know, that was one of the things that we really held on to, certainly through socials, our shop window at the moment. You know, our doors are closed, so how do we make sure that we keep telling our story in the best possible way? But the analytics behind that, you know, keep us informed as to who our audience is, what that growth in audience is, and how we can kind of, you know, identify where those digital hangouts are, and how we taper our budget to kind of do that. So I think it's a combination of everything that Harry and David said, but absolutely going right back to the basics and just kind of remembering that short, medium and long-term strategy.
Definitely. And I know that we discussed yesterday about the importance of continuing to spend through a crisis. It's something that obviously David works on quite a lot with his, and as with Harry and Stephanie, obviously different projects require different budgets, but the importance is not to just stop everything. Is there anything in particular, going to you, Harry, about what people should be measuring when they're putting together the budgets? Obviously, you've mentioned about cost per acquisition and putting together the funnel, but is there anything that people can retrospectively look at to be able to help prepare them for the months ahead?
So I think with each funnel that we map out is going to have various personas that we want to push through that funnel. So we've got our business travel, we've got romantic weekends away, we've got all of these different personas. Now, by having a very sort of a retrospective exploration into who those personas are, I think that quite a lot of that data already exists. So whether that's in the PMS or your CRM systems or whatever, is taking stock and retrospectively looking at all of those key personas. Can we identify them? And then also, what I would say, each persona is going to have new things that are important to them. So we call these, I guess, jobs to be done, which is essentially, if you have a romantic weekend away, right, we've got our persona, we've got our couple, what's important to them historically is going to probably be different now. It's going to be, am I going to be, is there going to be enough space where I'm eating? Is there going to be enough social distance between the person checking in ahead of me, and all these kind of things. Now, so using that retrospective data around personas, let's really actually define those personas and then define how all the different sort of decision points, those jobs to be done, those things that those personas are going to be thinking, how they have changed, and list them out. That would, I think, be quite an important retrospective use of retrospective data to map out how our previous guests have changed in their mentality. And where you then carry forward that into your marketing is all of those shifting, I guess, expectations of the product that you're offering need to then carry through. So what we might have been doing in terms of selling a bustling bar with loads of a really exciting atmosphere, that vibe is probably not, our marketing messaging around that is not going to be as effective, because we've mapped out the persona that we might still be targeting, and it might be the same persona. The expectations in the product of that persona are going to be different. So mapping those changing expectations into our marketing messaging is I think you can directly map historical information, put it through this kind of jobs to be done framework, this what exactly do they, what piece of information and what do they need to overcome, and then obviously tweaking that in the marketing messaging.
Brilliant. And we've just had a question in that's quite relevant to this topic of preparation. The question says, at the moment, revenue is next to nothing, obviously, so it's difficult to allocate percentage of revenue to a very little income. So this makes forward planning difficult whilst managing cash flow. Is there a way that people should be approaching this? Is there another way that you should be approaching your budget rather than on the percentage of revenue, and obviously looking at the income, the past income?
Yeah, it's a very good question, that one. And a lot of it goes back to the data, and just tying what Harry was together with the question. If you look at all the data at the moment, what we're looking for are little clues of things that are changing. So, for example, one of the things that we found just in recent weeks is that the average order value for a transaction, there are not many transactions, but those that are in place are actually a lot higher than they used to be. The average across the industry that we're seeing is about 115% up, which is quite a notable figure. It's lower in the cities, a lot higher in the rural areas. And that's given us some clues as to, well, who's buying it and what are they buying? Is this a short-term trend? Is it a longer-term trend? But you're looking for those little spikes, those little points of interest. And that is, if you've got a limited budget, focus on those. We are seeing differences between age groups. As you can well imagine, the 25 to 34-year-olds are the strongest performing age group, both in terms of interest levels and spending power. So yes, of course, target your marketing at those people, but almost counterintuitively, we're seeing a lot of activity from the over 65s as well. So it's looking out for those little clues and then saying, right, okay, with our limited budgets, let's focus on those. It's going to change in 2 weeks' time. We know that. And so you mentioned scenario planning 2 minutes ago. You've got to plan every single scenario out, look at the data, and then adjust your spending as you go along. As I said a few minutes ago, it's a multi-pronged, ever-changing approach to spend.
Sorry, I realised I'd muted myself. Just going on from that, and obviously in terms of being planning and being agile as well is obviously a key to this, especially when cash flow is not and revenue isn't at what it seems normally. What advice would you give people for creating agile plans? What can we be doing to make sure that we can easily adapt our strategies moving forward? I know that Stephanie, you've done a lot of re-strategizing and utilizing your brand values to be able to just realign yourselves. How have you managed to prepare for that and put that forward?
Yeah, as I say, I know we discussed it earlier, and I think the questions I just ask myself, and I know we mentioned it kind of yesterday when we caught up, I kind of go through the whole kind of what ifs and we could, or could we, should I say. And I think that's really important as every kind of week changes, what if this happens? What could we be doing? And actually, if you come up with a list of, say, 50, 100, 150 things, actually that's a better place to be in than kind of just waiting for the definitive answers or for someone to tell you that this is exactly how it's going to be. And I think for us, absolutely, we've got a document to send out afterwards, but our owner, Danny, has co-written kind of networking 2.0. So for us, communicating our plans and our strategy, I think is integral as well. And I think bringing people along that journey with you to help you shape that marketing budget. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what that's going to look like. So I think for us, in terms of the planning, I think it's just constantly asking those questions. What if, could we could, all of those different scenarios. And again, breaking that down by segment. And actually, I mean, even now it's changing every single week. I have a huge document that has all these kind of what ifs and actually we could, and aligning that with our product.
Yeah.
Because I think David mentioned earlier, all hotels are very, very different. We're all going to have a different kind of story to tell, and it's just how we tell that to our audiences. And they're saying something that we might do might be completely different to the hotel down the road. But I think it's spending that time and looking at the data and the analytics that are in front of us to say, actually, these are the core things that we could be driving. So I think just as much planning and preparation as possible, just keep going. Don't kind of think, right, it's done, dusted, kind of, off we go, because trust me, in 24 hours time it'll change again. Yeah. But it's okay. It's absolutely okay.
Point you mentioned on bringing people on the journey with you. I think, from what I've seen, I think hotels are probably not making the best use of the guests that they've already had in the past and the people they have in their database. There will be people in there that have stayed with you multiple times that they are brand ambassadors, and they are almost they are an amazing source of innovation. And bringing people on that journey with you will give that guest almost a sense of ownership over their future experiences. And I've seen some amazing sort of packages that have been bundled together. One of our someone we work with in Venice has essentially just partnered up with some local restaurants, local wine merchants, musicians, actors, like a whole complete smattering of a chauffeur company, just a smattering of loads of different services, but packaged up a really unique offering only for previous guests to experience. And that was actually driven a lot by what previous guests had wanted and what they felt comfortable with. So they used their database as a source of innovation, as a source of that agility. And naturally, people were biting their hand off for that offer, because actually it was almost crafted by the previous guests themselves that were those brand ambassadors. And we have in most cases a lot of people in our databases, and whether that is highly segmented or just or not that segmented, there will be brand ambassadors in there that you can actually turn to for as a source of innovation, whether that's via social or email or even just picking up the phone to someone that stayed with you 10 times over the last year. What would you like to see, and what would make you feel comfortable? And I think that sort of brand, that buy-in from we can create some amazing brand ambassadors in this case, and in the same way that I think a lot of companies are doing. Ourselves as an agency, it's very unprecedented. We're turning to hotels and saying, how can we best help? Is there anything that would be really useful for you right now? What tech or what software would be useful? In the same way that I think hotels can do that with their guests as well.
I certainly think people are more open to open communication now, more than ever, and it's okay just to pick up the phone and maybe ask questions that we probably wouldn't have asked 6-12 months ago. I think we just have to keep reminding ourselves the industry that we're in, and it's built on the foundation of relationships, whether that's through partners and suppliers or whether that's through guests. So I think, to your point, Harry, and obviously with me saying about the journey, it is absolutely picking up the phone. I think it's just looking at all of those aspects of engagement, whether that is through digital or just face-to-face, because we're doing it now. It's different, but we're doing it now. I think will be critical in how we kind of use that to shape our marketing budget and how we come out of this.
Brilliant.
I'd fully support everything that's been said there, and this just isn't opinion. This is fact. We going back to the data, pouring through all the numbers, we can see that, as I'm sure a lot of the people tuning in today will know, that the amount of traffic going into hotel websites at the moment is down to about 15% of what it was. We can see that those who have proactively engaged with their customers, and it's not that expensive to do that. You can do it through social media channels, just picking up the telephone. The traffic levels have more like halved rather than gone down by 85%. And that's what we're seeing in the industry. So it's so important that you just keep those communications going. And the phrase I would use is keep the momentum going, because the hotels that have got momentum behind them over this period of time are going to have that momentum going into the recovery and beyond. Those that are just sat there doing nothing at the moment, you're going to have to work very, very hard in 7 weeks to the 1st of July, if that's the magic date. So keep communicating.
Brilliant. And on the topic of communication, obviously content out there at the moment is in abundance, to say the least. We've been looking at some research, and 45% of global consumers are on social media and online, 50% more than they usually are. I think Apple released a stat that said that screen time on iPhones is up by 350%. So people are online, people are available for you to communicate with. how are you advising people spend their communications budget? David, in particular, I know that this is something that you're very keen on working on with 80 Days, is that content level of making sure the brand awareness is still there, keeping communication up with audiences that you already have in your database. Are you spending money in that area? And if so, how are people spending it effectively?
Yeah, there's probably two key things coming out of that. What we're seeing coming back from the industry, especially the hotels, the organizations, the travel authorities that are working with us, a lot of them are talking to us about, as I go back to the brand positioning piece, and I go back to what I said at the beginning of the debate, which is, it's who you were 8 weeks ago may be different to now. So you have to make sure that your positioning and your brand message is aligned with what people are expecting from you moving forwards. If you were all known about vibrancy and being in the hustle and bustle in the middle of London, those messages might not go down so well in this current climate. People want something else. So it's about realigning those messages. Again, I could talk for hours about that particular point, but the second point on content specifically, and going back really to what you're asking about, we have seen a colossal shift in what people are looking at on websites since, really, especially since the beginning of April. And, in simple terms, people have gone from a transactional relationship with hotel websites and hotels to an engagement strategy, an engagement sort of piece of communication. They want to, we've seen a massive increase in people going to the about sections and what's going on at the hotels. The biggest increase is actually the increasing of people looking at blog content. We have to try so hard in the past to get people to read blogs. Now they're looking for that content. Galleries as well. I've got a love-hate relationship with galleries because most of them are rubbish, but people are looking at these now. So what can you be doing? This doesn't cost any money to go into your galleries and give people images of things they want to see. Don't have a crowded bar for whatever, but just don't do that. But show the open spaces. If you're in the middle of London, show Green Park, Hyde Park, the places that you're near to. Again, a massive topic, but it's those sorts of things we need to be thinking about. Are you aligned properly with your customers? And acknowledge that what people want from you in terms of content has changed and probably will stay changed for a long time to come.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's obviously a point well made. As simple as it is, making sure your website is up to date with imagery that doesn't look like it's full of people all the time, and that you can be social distance in the property if that is the approach that you're taking.
Sorry, can I jump in on one point there? So just in terms, I fully agree. I think in terms of the buyer's cycle, if we look typically from awareness, consideration, the purchase itself, and then the stay, and then obviously the post-stay CRM side of things, as normally we just move everyone from awareness all the way through to the other end. Now at the moment we're stuck in that awareness phase because no one can physically transact because there isn't anything to transact on. Now the awareness side of marketing requires very different content and a very different approach to the transactional side of things. If we look at the transaction, that's like typically your Google hotel ads, very price orientated messaging or sort of offer based stuff. The awareness phase is that inspirational stuff. So and to completely complement what you were saying about the blogs, if we're stuck in this awareness phase, we need to be inspiring and positioning ourselves in the mind for future consideration. We cannot be, our marketing messaging shouldn't really be containing features or functionality or price or anything detail orientated. All we're trying to do is tell a story and get people involved in our story at this point, so that when the consideration and the buyer's cycle does start moving, we can then we've already put the groundwork in for the awareness phase, and that over the course of a buyer cycle might be several months anyway. So if we forget and don't invest in the awareness phase with all of the content and the things that David was saying there, we're shooting ourselves in the foot for July and August. And that's, I think, probably for people that have just paused and gone dormant, that will be the biggest struggle in July and August, is because the awareness phase will not have been appropriately catered for.
No, we've had a question through actually about content and obviously the pushing of marketing content. If everyone, obviously with the July date that we now have from the government that everyone is aiming for, so that we hope that everyone is operational, if everyone is doing that at the same time, every hospitality business in the UK is now ramping up their awareness phase. When it comes to July, everyone's going to, the noise is going to be massive in the industry, and consumers are going to be spoiled for choice. We mentioned it previously that you're not just competing with your local hotel or restaurant anymore, you're competing with every other hospitality experience. So how much work and budget is required to make sure you're coming above the noise, that you're taking that next step that no one else is taking, to get heard amongst all of the chat, really? Stephanie, how are you approaching that with exclusive?
I think with us, as I say, going back to kind of those real targeting, I think going back on Harry's point about our existing client base, there will be a time and place, and we'll never stop trying to kind of get new customers, but absolutely you've got a loyal following. They trust and authenticity through content and working with you, I think, is absolutely key. Whether you then break that down even further and I think we have to be mindful, I think it's kind of going back to that whole hierarchy of needs. We've gone back into survival mode. What are the things that we need? We genuinely want to go out and do these things. We need to feel safe. We need to feel that we can trust. We need to know, our money's safe. So all of those things. So I think when we start to look at the noise, I think there's a place for us all. There was before and there still will be. But absolutely that kind of local, regional, national, almost doing that kind of spread of focus, I think will be key for us all. And as I say, there is enough business to go round. We all have very unique things that we have to offer. And I think that's just what's really important for us all to focus on, that there is a place for us all. Absolutely focus on your existing client base. They're the ones that are going to support us, and they already are. You're talking about blogs and content. Our Flock initiative is something we started kind of 18 months ago, and and that continues to kind of gain momentum, and and that is pulling in past clients that are supporting us with content. It's partners, it's suppliers that are supporting us with content. So it is absolutely critical that awareness stage is absolutely invested in hugely. As I said, it doesn't have to cost that much. It really doesn't. But obviously having the support of any digital agencies that you have with you is critical in getting it out there. But I think for us, it's just making sure our messaging is very clear and defined, and that we absolutely target our existing client base, and also just start focusing on what are the things that people are going to genuinely need. Their behaviours have changed, a bit like what the gentleman said earlier. And we have to kind of make sure our messaging reflects that. Definitely. We haven't talked about product for the last kind of 6 weeks. And I think I said this yesterday, it's our people that have been driving the content through social. It's our people that have been kind of providing us with that critical content. We've always been very proud of a company that, our whole business is built on the people that we have, and more so than ever right now, because actually the chefs, the gym instructors, the therapists, they're the guys that are flying the flag for us at the moment. It's not necessarily a pretty picture that I have behind me right now. Or a bedroom shot. It's actually how we make people feel, and I think that's what's going to be really important when we come out of this, how we make people feel.
I would really to support everything you've just said there. I think one of the realities at the moment, I don't think things have actually changed that much in terms of standing out from the crowd, if I'm being really honest. I think all this has done is make us open our eyes and realize that in January, everyone's talking about, winter breaks and 20% off, and there's a lot of noise then. And what makes people stand out in January in a normal year is the same as what will make you stand out on the 1st of July, which is knowing your point of difference, know who you are, and reinforce that message. As you were saying, Steph, it's about your staff. Talk about the staff values. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people talking about hygiene and all of these sorts of things, but what makes you different? If you're talking about your product, remember that you're not selling hotel bedrooms and meeting spaces. You're selling an experience. Focus on that experience. That's what makes you different. If you just stick to what your truth is, what you're all about, you'll stand out from the crowd anyway with your target audience. And that's what it's always been like. This is, as I said, this crisis has just made us wake up and realize that. So, just stick to what you normally do for the 1st of July. Yeah.
We've had 2 questions through actually that I think will be relevant for all of you. The conversations that you've been having. Both questions are very similar in talking about consumer confidence. If everything happens with no setbacks when we hit July, that hospitality businesses are now becoming operational, and let's say by August people are open and live, do we feel that people will be comfortable by July, August? How is it, the conversations that you had? And if not, when do you think we should be asking our consumers and our customers what they're feeling and whether they want to come, what would make them more comfortable?
Yeah, I think with in terms of timings and who's going to be first through the doors and what's going to happen, it's very much sort of intercity, and then I guess the rest of the country, and then maybe cross borders, and then fully international as a rollout, potentially over many months. Now, for that domestic travel market, that's two prongs. First of all, the targeting of our marketing messaging, obviously to those local cities around us, and things like local radio or local newspapers, and things like actually not just thinking I'm going to send my message to the entirety of Google and get everyone to click on my advert, but being quite specific in our domestic travel and sort of literally just partnering up with almost local cities. Everyone, maybe people within a 50-mile radius that want to escape the house, that are kind of coming out of that cabin fever. And also catering that product to them. So things like, are you pet friendly? Because a lot of people have dogs and they're probably going to, do you have parking? If you don't have parking, can you partner up with a local car park and give them, include it in the room price? And all the things like the domestic travel needs is probably different to what an international traveler needs as well. So the first through the door consumer confidence will be domestic travel, intercity, and then the wider rest of the country. So it's about trying to resonate with, how would you be comfortable going to another city? If you do go to another city or another town or another rural area or whatever, what would you need? You're going to need a place to park. You're probably going to need somewhere to, are you going to be able to bring your dog? So getting in the minds of that domestic traveler, certainly for the next 60 to 90 days, or 30 to 60 days, maybe to 90 days. And then which actually could be a very lucrative thing going forward, because I think the domestic market is probably certainly from my experience, is probably untapped, I guess, underappreciated in terms of a lot of hotels probably go, we've got lots of marketing in America, lots of marketing in getting lots of people over from China and stuff. But actually, there's often quite a lot of people on your doorstep that, if we can get the domestic targeting and product right now, could actually serve us in really, really good stead for the future as well. I think staycations are going to be something, or people not actually going overseas are going to be probably higher than normal for the foreseeable future, not just in this little short window anyway. I see it probably 12 months out. So actually getting domestic travel sorted earlier is probably going to set us in good stead for the next 18 months anyway.
Yeah. Just going back to that's, yeah, perfect points. Just going back to the question on how and when we should be asking our customers about their confidence, how comfortable they are to make bookings. How would you recommend people do that? How are you having conversations at the moment with your own clients and your own bookers already? Stephanie, I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah, I think it's breaking it down by segment as well. I think it's just, leisure and weddings, you could argue, are a much more emotional purchase for you. So I think the conversation and the tone is very differently, and all the different considerations as to whether you feel confident. Whereas from a MICE market, we've been having those conversations since the day we closed, because I think there are pockets of people that strongly have that true British grit about them, that generally want to kind of get on and get through this with all the key criteria ticked off. There are those people absolutely that you won't see for dust for months, and that's okay. But I don't think there's any harm in having those conversations now. But it's a genuine human to human, not hotel to customer conversation. It is a very human conversation. How are you? How are you feeling? What are your thoughts? And I don't think at this present moment in time there is anything wrong with that. I'd be doing that now.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. Yes, to talk to people directly. You've got the analysis behind the scenes to see what people are actually doing. And one of the part of the question was about the confidence side of things, and I think that's going to be the biggest context for us all, is how do you deal with that confidence over the coming months. I mean, the reality is, you know, we're seeing this as a 2 to 3 year recovery, not a 2 to 3 month recovery. And from what we're seeing at the moment, it's not July when people are booking, it's September. You know, so and the confidence is different, as you know, as Steph was saying, by different audiences. I mean, we're seeing that it's the families that seem to be showing more interest in the rural hotels. It's the younger age groups that are looking at cities. Yeah. That could change in 2 weeks' time. But so play to that kind of information. Just keep an eye on it. Talk to people, and that will give you the guidance you need. And keep going back to this thing about being agile and prepared.
And do you think
retail companies are so my wife works in a market research company, and they're doing loads of surveys around willingness to spend in physical locations and constantly tapping customer sentiment, and they whole European wide survey. It'd be interesting to see if that's being done on the hospitality side of things, because just as a kind of central resource for guest sentiment around travel, might be quite an interesting thing to kind of just do among guests, potentially with our own databases, but also if there was a centrally managed one, that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah. And just another question that we've had through, thank you all for submitting them, by the way. We're fighting for our marketing budgets at the moment. So how do we go about convincing the finance department of these budgets? Obviously, it's hard to make sure that ensure that they're maintained is obviously quite a feat when the business has obviously had to take so many cuts and is going through these challenges. How would you go about convincing, and what areas would you focus on, obviously, to fight for your marketing budget with your finance department?
I think for me, I have a very good relationship with our finance director, which obviously helps massively. But equally, I think being in the role that I am, and you know, I kind of appeal to anybody in similar position to myself, you know, for those people that are working still in sales, back up there's an element of gut instinct, of course there always is, but back it up with a modelling plan. You know, for me, even before we closed, I started to kind of model how we closed by segment and by property, and actually, you know, what did that trajectory look like? And yes, it's all assumptions, but what could that look like on the outside? Then if I match my marketing budget to those numbers, at the end of the day, our finance directors are looking for the future, for, you know, cash flow, for, you know, revenue generation. You have to back it up. They have to align. So that's all I'd say. Your sales and your marketing has to align. And yes, you know, it could all change tomorrow. You know, all the forecasts, if we're attempting to do them now, could change by next week. But I think just have a really solid plan that you can put in front of them to say, actually, if we do this, this is what the results could be. If I do nothing, you know, the conversion on the web booking engine could be 4% less or 2.2% less, which could result in X, Y, Z. So I think just have the data ready, have the modelling ready, have the sales plan supported by the marketing plan, and I think you'll stand a good chance.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
The visual. Sorry.
No, go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I think as well, you just need to look at history. And, you know, it's not, although we've never been in this situation before, many of us have been through economic downturns and health crises in the past. And history shows that those that just slash the marketing, any of their budgets, and don't invest moving forwards, do not come out of this looking so good. Those that it's that delicate balance between, you know, tightening operational efficiencies and investing in future growth. And if you get that right, history shows that those businesses thrive when they come out of these situations. And I think just reminding ourselves of that is helpful in these situations.
Brilliant. And just
and
moving
that awareness, like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Harry.
Also, so just kind of visualizing the funnel as well. Like, if we neglect the awareness thing, if we just visualize the funnel, there will not be anything coming out the end of it. And with that, as to your point, David, about using the historical data, we know that for X number of people that we can engage with at the awareness phase, this is going to come out the end. And yes, it might be a 2-month, 3-month lead time before they do, but if you can visualize that and actually communicate that to a finance team, this is the awareness phase. We're not going to expect these results for another few months, and that's fine. But if we neglect this now, you know, there is going to be no through flow through that funnel. And and we want to make as much revenue. So obviously when lockdown and things return, but we have to put the work in now. And if you've got that historical conversion data, even though it's probably not going to be bang on because we're in a very different scenario, at least it can be used to visualize that funnel, rather than just seeing marketing as this monthly outspend. It's to say, we're in this awareness phase. These customers that we engage in now are going to be the ones that convert in a couple of months' time.
Definitely, thank you. Well, we're just very aware that we're running out of time. So I want to say thank you to everyone that's sent their questions through. Obviously, it's very helpful to understand what the attendees are obviously thinking and what they're going through at the moment. If anyone doesn't have any more questions, we can finish there. I just want to say thank you to everyone for all of your input, your time, for the panel today. Obviously, we really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and it's been brilliant to hear from you and to find out what each individual sector of the industry is looking at, whether that is brand, and obviously having Stephanie from Exclusive herself and the hospitality group, and Harry working on the digital side and embedding with the content on websites, and obviously 80 Days supporting all of their brand content. So we've just had one more question. Any silver bullet for local digital marketing for restaurants and bars? Anyone?
Gentlemen.
I think being creative. I think there's been some wicked meals in greenhouses, and we've seen like some amazing kind of food boxes. Like if you've got that kitchen at your disposal, why don't you do your own version of HelloFresh and film a video of your chef doing the recipe, sending out the ingredients, and I've seen that being done really well. I've seen we're sort of working with a couple of people on kind of virtual reality show rounds, and almost have a film a bustling bar in 3D, and you can almost send a branded Google Cardboard headset to people, and so they can experience things in 3D. I think now's the time to be a little bit creative, and we don't have to have that. Obviously, the majority is bums on seats, right? But there are ways through things like food boxes or private one-on-one Zoom tasting sessions with the sommelier, or a private tutorial with the head chef, kind of things. There are little ways of addressing that awareness phase and creating a bit of noise, but also there are ways to monetize it as well. And I've seen some places make some proper money with doing this. And yes, it's not the same. It's not the same sort of money as having a full restaurant, but what it does do is simultaneously drive a little bit of revenue, but also can really fuel that awareness phase as well. Because by having a private who's not going to talk about the fact that they've had a private session with the head chef of somewhere in the luxury of their own home, and they are cooking alongside them, things like that I think then set you up, I guess. Build some noise, and yes, it's going to be tough until everyone can physically sit, but yeah, there are other ways to sit people. I know there's lots of outside eating going on. Certainly in Amsterdam, there's been some restaurants that have these pop up little greenhouses and stuff like that. Local beer deliveries, I've seen some local restaurants do lots of alcohol delivery.
No, that's brilliant, thank you. Does anyone have anything to add? No? That's fine. Oh, hang on 1 second, Stephanie. You're on mute.
I'm muted, thanks. More a question for the guys, actually, just on response to Josh's question. Where would you, I'm speaking on behalf of him now, but where would you say Facebook plays a place within that? And again, from that local bars and restaurants, is it a community spirit mentality through channels such as Facebook that could support that kind of activity?
I think one of the key words in the question was local, because the recovery is going to be local, then national, then international. So the things we should be really looking at just now is how to, where we have a local audience, is focus on that. And social is one of and Facebook is one of the key words to do that, as is, Instagram. You know, I think there's other things that you can do, although this can be applied to national as well as local. It's just, you know, things like custom intent audiences, understand what people are searching for, study those search phrase, and then advertise back using that, whether it be through, you know, actual digital marketing or whether it be through the social media side of things as well. So there's a lot that can be done, but local is the key word there, and community, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm part of it. I live in St Albans, and there's this group called All Things St Albans on Facebook, and it goes, and stuff on there is anywhere from lost parrots, people leaving their wheelie bins in the wrong place, but also there are local local restaurants that are just putting on very honest, very open comments on there about, guys, if you could order from us, that would be amazing. And the uptake has been really cool because it is such a specific audience. Everyone knows those restaurants and bars, and they're happy to, yes, please deliver it to my house. You know, and engaging that way, and that, as you said, David, that hyper local way of doing things. There will probably be Facebook groups for your village or town or locale, and making sure that we're a part of that as well is quite important. I think I've just seen on that little St Albans group, there's probably like 10,000 members of it, but it's there's a lot happens on it. It annoys me. I had to mute the notifications, but there's a lot of stuff that gets spoken about on there.
Thank you. Well, thank you for everyone for their questions. We'll have to finish it there. Again, just want to say a big thank you to our panelists for joining us today and sharing their thoughts and answering everyone's questions. Like I mentioned, this is being recorded, so this will be available to everybody on YouTube once the seminar is finished, and we'll follow up with everyone with an email with some of the pieces of research that everyone has mentioned. So definitely hold out for that. So I just want to say the next Custard Masterclass will be taking place on the 26th of May. We are being joined by Mark Garada, who is a brand strategist, and he's going to be giving us a brand masterclass and covering the top tips of getting your brand ready for July, hopefully. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you on one of our webinars soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.